We're going to go over how to add and subtract fractions with different denominators. I'm going to go over the rules, but an example is going to do much better, because how I'm going to add and subtract fractions with different denominators is a method that students came up with the very first year I taught. That very first year, I had students in groups and they were competing against each other. And most of the time when I had them compete using fractions, most groups didn't like it. But there was one group that really wanted fractions, and they would win a lot of times. And this is the method that they used to win these competitions. It's a really quick way of adding and subtracting fractions with different denominators. The first thing you always need to do if they have different denominators is find a common denominator. And what they would do is they would simply multiply the denominators together, and you would always have a common denominator. Wouldn't always be the best one, but it would be a common denominator. That would work every single time. The next thing you need to do is change each fraction to where it has this new denominator. And we're going to go over how they did that. Then you follow the rules for combining these fractions together once they have a common denominator, and you always simplify a fraction. So let's look at this first example, and I'll show you how they combined these fractions together and how they found a common denominator. The way they found a common denominator is they simply multiplied these bottom numbers together. They would take these bottom numbers together and always multiply them together. That way they would always have a common denominator. Another thing they would do, instead of writing two fractions, they would write one fraction with that new denominator in the bottom. So 2 times 3 is 6. Then they needed to change the top numbers. The way they would change the top numbers is at the end of this arrow, they would go across right here and multiply those two together. 3 times 1 is 3. Whether it was adding or subtracting, whatever was right here, since this is adding, I'm going to put a plus right here, and then I'm going to go across again and multiply these together. 2 times 2 is 4. So to review what they did, they went 2 times 3 is 6. Then 3 times 1 is 3. They would put it right there. Since this is a plus, they would put plus right here, and then they go across again. 2 times 2 is 4, and they would write that 4 down right there. Then they would simply combine those numbers in the top. 3 plus 4 is 7, and there is my common denominator of 6. They would always multiply these together to get a common denominator and then cross multiply. Let's try another example. Our next example is 12 and 3 as our denominators. Now 12 would probably be a better common denominator, but they wouldn't even worry about that. They would just look and they would multiply these two together right here. They multiply 12 times 3. 12 times 3, 36. Then they would cross multiply right here. 3 times 7, they put 21 right here. Since this is a subtraction problem, they would put minus right here, and they cross multiply again. 12 times 2, 12 times 2, 24. Then they would simply type this in their calculator. They go 21 minus 24 is equal to negative 3 with 36 as its denominator. Always simplify these. We're going to use our prime numbers, our list of prime numbers, to help us simplify this. Start off with 2. Well, 2 go into 3. 3 divided by 2. Decimal, so 2 is not working. I go to the next one, which is 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. See if 3 will go into 36. 36 divided by 3, 12. I bring my negative sign over. 3 worked the first time. Let's see if it'll work again. 3 is bigger than the number that's in the fraction. So as soon as I get to that point, I know I have simplified that. So again, multiply your bottom numbers to get a common denominator and then cross multiply. Use your prime numbers to simplify it. One more example. We're going to take a negative fraction and subtract another fraction from it. Again, what they would do is they would find a common denominator by multiplying these bottom numbers together. That will get a denominator that will work every single time. 5 times 7 is 35. Remember, this negative sign goes with this top number, just like this negative sign goes with this top number. So when I cross multiply, I'm actually taking 7 times negative 2. 7 times negative 2, negative 14. Same here. This is 5 times negative 4. That's negative 20. When I combine numbers together, I need to remember my rules. If the signs are the same, I add 14 plus 20, 34, and keep the sign. Bring my denominator over. I need to see if I can simplify this. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11 are good numbers to check. 34 divided by 2, but will 2 go into 35? No. 34 divided by 3, a decimal. 34 divided by 5, decimal. 34 divided by 7, decimal. 34 divided by 11, decimal. That means this is probably in lowest terms.